"She's not a doctor, she dropped out." The words echoed in my mind as I stood in the sterile hallway of Mount Sinai Hospital, my white coat pristine, my stethoscope heavy around my neck. Those were the exact words my parents had been telling everyone for the past 10 years. But right now, none of that mattered. What mattered was the voice crackling over the intercom. "Dr. Harper, ICU room 3, emergency." I watched my mother's face drain of all colour as she turned toward me, her mouth falling open. Behind her, my father stood frozen, his hand still gripping the visitor's badge he'd been fumbling with. And there, on the gurney being rushed past us, was my brother Michael, unconscious, his face pale as the hospital sheets. Monitors beeping frantically around him. I didn't hesitate. This was what I'd trained for, what I'd sacrificed everything for. "Excuse me," I said quietly, brushing past my parents as if they were strangers, because in many ways they were. "But let me back up. Let me tell you how Dr. Harper Chen, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at one of New York's most prestigious hospitals, became the daughter who dropped out and amounted to nothing. It started when I was 7 years old, holding a broken bird in my tiny hands. Michael had found it in our backyard, its wing bent at an impossible angle. While he cried and wanted to put it out of its misery, I carefully splinted the wing with popsicle sticks and medical tape I'd stolen from our medicine cabinet. "Harper's going to be a doctor someday," my grandmother had whispered to my mother that day, watching me tend to the bird with the focus of someone 3 times my age. My mother had laughed. "Don't be silly, Mom. Michael's the smart one. Harper's just playing." But I wasn't playing. Every scraped knee in the neighbourhood became my patient. Every biology textbook became my Bible. While other kids played video games, I was watching medical documentaries, taking notes in a composition notebook I'd labelled medical knowledge. Michael, 3 years older and supposedly the smart one, was more interested in video games and hanging out with friends. He was charming, funny, everything a 10-year-old boy should be. But he had zero interest in academics and even less interest in helping others. It didn't matter. In my parents' eyes, Michael could do no wrong. "Harper, stop bothering your brother with those boring books," my father would say when I tried to share something fascinating I'd learned about the human heart. "Michael, tell your sister about your soccer game instead." By the time I was 14, I was acing every science class, volunteering at the local animal shelter, and had already decided I wanted to specialise in cardiac surgery. The heart fascinated me, this incredible muscle that kept everything else alive, that could break and heal and break again. Michael, meanwhile, was failing half his classes and had been suspended twice for fighting. "Harper's such a bookworm," my mother would tell her friends at dinner parties. "We're worried about her social skills. Now Michael, he's got everything going for him, so popular, so athletic." When I was 16, everything changed. It was a Tuesday in March when Mrs. Rodriguez, my AP biology teacher, called me into her office. "Harper," she said, her eyes bright with excitement, "I've been talking to some people at Columbia University. Your test scores, your volunteer work, your research project on congenital heart defects. They're offering you a full scholarship to their pre-med program." I remember my hands shaking as I held the letter. Full scholarship, Columbia University, pre-med. I ran home, bursting through the front door with the acceptance letter clutched in my fist. "Mom, Dad, I got into Columbia, full scholarship." My mother was in the kitchen making dinner. She barely looked up from the stove. "That's nice, honey. Set the table, would you? Your father and Michael will be home soon." "Mum, you don't understand. This is Columbia University. They want me in their pre-med program. I'm going to be a doctor." She finally turned around, and I'll never forget the look on her face. It wasn't pride. It wasn't excitement. It was annoyance. "Harper, we've talked about this. Medical school is expensive, even if you got into college, which is great, don't get me wrong. Medical school costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. But Mum, this is my dream. I can get loans. I can work. Your brother needs our support right now. He's struggling in school, and we're looking into getting him a tutor, maybe some extra help. College isn't for everyone, Harper. Maybe you should think about something more practical." I felt like she'd punched me in the stomach. Practical? "Your father and I have been talking. There's a medical assistant program at the community college. 2 years and you'd have a stable job. You'd still be around medicine, just in a different way. Medical assistant. After years of straight A's, after volunteering hundreds of hours, after dreaming of saving lives in an operating room, she wanted me to become a medical assistant." That night, I heard my parents talking in their bedroom. "She's getting ideas above her station," my father was saying. "Doctor? Come on, Linda. She's a good kid, but let's be realistic." "I know," my mother replied. "Michael's going to need all our financial support. His grades are improving, and you know how smart he really is. He just needs to find his passion." Exactly. Harper can contribute to the family. Medical assistant makes good money, and she can help support Michael when he goes to college. I pressed my ear closer to the door, my heart breaking with every word. "Besides," my mother continued, "girls like Harper. They're better suited for support roles. Michael has that natural leadership quality. He's going to do big things." I slipped back to my room and cried into my pillow until I couldn't breathe. The next morning, I sat my parents down at breakfast. Michael was still asleep. He rarely got up before noon on weekends. "I want to accept the Columbia Scholarship," I said quietly. "This is my chance to become a doctor." My father put down his coffee cup with more force than necessary. "Harper, we've discussed this. The answer is no." "But it's a full scholarship. It won't cost you anything." "It's not just about the money," my mother said, though we all knew it was. "It's about being realistic about your capabilities. Medical school is incredibly demanding. Are you sure you're cut out for that kind of pressure?" I've had the highest grades in my class since elementary school. Academic success in high school is different from the real world, my father said. Your mother and I have decided. You'll do the medical assistant program, help support the family, and maybe eventually you can think about nursing school. Nursing school, like that was some consolation prize. What about Michael? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. What are his plans? My parents exchanged a look. Michael is still figuring things out, my mother said. He's got time. He's going to take a gap year, maybe do some traveling, find himself. When he's ready for college, we'll be there to support him. A gap year. Traveling. Finding himself. Meanwhile, I was supposed to give up my dreams and become a medical assistant to help pay for Michael's journey of self-discovery. I'm accepting the scholarship, I said, standing up from the table. With or without your support. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, my father spoke, his voice cold. If you make that choice, Harper, you're making it alone. Don't expect any help from us. Fine, I whispered, though my heart was shattering. I'll do it alone. That evening, I was in my room filling out the acceptance paperwork when Michael knocked on my door. Come in, I called, not looking up from the forms. He sat on my bed, unusually quiet. Michael was never quiet. Mum and Dad told me about Columbia, he said finally. I kept writing, not trusting my voice. Harper, I'm sorry. I looked up then, surprised. Michael never apologized for anything. For what? He was staring at his hands. For everything, I guess. For being the screw-up while you're perfect at everything. For Mum and Dad treating you like you don't matter. Tears pricked my eyes. I'm not perfect, Michael. I know what I want. I know. And you're going to be an amazing doctor. He looked up at me then, and for the first time in years, I saw my big brother. The one who used to let me tag along with his friends, who taught me how to ride a bike, who once punched a kid for making fun of my thick glasses. Will you still talk to me? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. When I'm at Columbia? Are you kidding? I'm going to brag to everyone that my little sister is a genius doctor. For a moment I thought maybe everything would be okay. Maybe Michael would stand up for me. Maybe he'd help convince our parents. But the next morning, everything fell apart. I woke up to the smell of smoke. I ran downstairs to find my father in the backyard, burning something in the old metal trash can we used for yard waste. As I got closer, I realized what it was. My acceptance letter, my scholarship paperwork, my research project on congenital heart defects, my notebook labelled medical knowledge, everything I'd worked for, everything I'd dreamed of, going up in flames. Dad, what are you doing? I screamed, trying to grab the papers, but it was too late. They were already ash. Making sure you don't make a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life, he said calmly. You'll thank us someday, Harper. When you have a stable job and a normal life, you'll understand we did this for your own good. I fell to my knees in the wet grass, watching the last of my dreams turn to smoke. My mother appeared at the back door. Harper, honey, I've already called the community college. You can start the medical assistant program in the fall. Isn't that exciting? I looked up at her and something inside me broke. Not just my heart. Something deeper. Something that had always believed my parents loved me as much as they loved Michael. Get out, I whispered. What? Get out, I screamed, scrambling to my feet. Get out of my life. Harper, you're being dramatic. No, I'm done. I'm done pretending that you see me as anything more than Michael's support system. I'm done believing that you love me. My father stepped forward. Harper, you're upset, but I'm 18, I said, my voice deadly calm now. I can make my own choices, and I choose not to have parents who burned my future because it didn't fit their plan for their precious son. I walked past them into the house, went to my room and started packing. I had some money saved from my part-time job at the animal shelter. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get me started. Michael appeared in my doorway as I was stuffing clothes into a duffel bag. Harper, wait. Maybe we can fix this. Maybe. You could have stopped them, I said without looking at him. You knew what those papers meant to me and you let them burn. I didn't know they were going to... Yes, you did. I finally looked at him. You knew and you let it happen because it was easier than standing up to them. Because as long as I'm the disappointment, you get to be the golden child. His face crumpled. That's not true. Isn't it? I zipped up my bag. When was the last time you defended me, Michael? When was the last time you told them they were wrong about me? He didn't answer because we both knew the truth. He'd never defended me. Not once. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know you are, but sorry doesn't give me back my scholarship. Sorry doesn't give me back my dreams. I walked past him toward the front door where my parents were waiting. Harper, please, my mother said, tears in her eyes. Don't leave like this. We're your family. I paused at the door, my hand on the knob. No, I said quietly. Family doesn't burn each other's dreams. Family doesn't sacrifice one child for another. You made your choice when you lit that fire. Now I'm making mine. And I walked out the door, leaving behind everything I'd ever known. 10 years later, I was Dr. Harper Chen, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at Mount Sinai Hospital. I'd put myself through college, working 3 jobs, earned my medical degree on academic scholarships and student loans, and completed one of the most competitive surgical residencies in the country. My parents didn't know any of this. As far as they were concerned, their daughter Harper had dropped out and disappeared. They told people I was working somewhere out of state, maybe as a medical assistant, probably not amounting to much. Sometimes they forgot to mention me at all. Michael, meanwhile, had spent his gap year playing video games. Then another year, finding himself. By the time he finally went to community college for accounting, I was already in medical school. By the time he graduated and got an entry-level job at a small firm, I was chief resident. By the time he moved back in with our parents because he couldn't afford his own place, I was performing heart transplants. None of them knew. I'd made sure of that. I'd built a new life with new friends who became my chosen family. Dr. Sarah Martinez, my best friend from medical school who knew my whole story. Dr. James Liu, my mentor who'd guided me through residency. The nurses, residents, and patients who filled my days with purpose and meaning. I thought I was done with my biological family forever. Until that Tuesday night in October when everything changed. I was in my office reviewing surgical notes for the next day's procedures when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Harper, this is Jenny Rodriguez from high school. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I got your number from Mrs. Peterson. There's been an emergency with your family. Your brother Michael is in the hospital with heart problems, and your parents are asking everyone for money for medical bills. I thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long time. Michael, heart problems. The irony wasn't lost on me. The brother my parents had chosen over me now needed the very skills they'd tried to stop me from developing. I typed back, "Thank you for letting me know." And then I set my phone aside and went back to my surgical notes, but I couldn't concentrate. Despite everything, despite the way they treated me, Michael was still my brother. The same brother who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd apologized in my room that night 10 years ago. The same brother who'd watched our parents burn my dreams and done nothing to stop them. I tried to push the thoughts away, tried to focus on my patients, the people who actually mattered in my life now. But as the night wore on, I found myself thinking about Michael's heart. What kind of problems? Was it the congenital defect I'd suspected when we were kids? The one I'd written my research project about before Dad burned it? Dr. Chen? I looked up to see Sarah standing in my doorway, concern etched on her face. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I told her about the text message, about Michael, about the 10 years of silence. Jesus, Harper, she said, sinking into the chair across from my desk. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said firmly. They made their choice. I made mine. Michael's heart problems aren't my responsibility. Sarah was quiet for a moment. But he's your brother. He stopped being my brother the day he let them destroy my future. Maybe this is the universe giving you a chance to show them who you really are. Who you became despite them. I shook my head. I don't need their validation anymore, Sarah. I've built a good life without them. I know you have. But Harper, what if this is your chance to get closure? What if this is how you finally prove to yourself that you don't need their approval because you're already everything you wanted to be? That night, I lay awake thinking about her words, about Michael, about the scared 16-year-old girl who'd watched her dreams go up in smoke. I'd spent 10 years building walls around that girl's pain, 10 years proving I didn't need them. But maybe Sarah was right. Maybe it was time to show them exactly who Harper Chen had become. The next evening I was leaving the hospital after a particularly challenging surgery when my phone rang. Unknown number. Dr. Chen? The voice was shaky, desperate. This is Dr. Chen. This is Linda Chen. I think you might be my daughter. My mother's voice. After 10 years of silence, I stopped walking, my heart hammering in my chest. I got your name from the hospital directory, she continued, crying now. Harper Chen, cardiac surgeon. I thought maybe, is it really you? I could have hung up, should have hung up. Instead, I said, what do you want? It's Michael. He's dying, Harper. His heart is failing and the doctors here don't know what to do. We've been to 3 hospitals and they all say the same thing. He needs a specialist, someone who really understands complex cardiac cases. A cold laugh escaped me. And you thought of me? Harper, if this is really you, if you really became a doctor like you always wanted, please. I know we don't deserve your help. I know we were terrible to you, but he's dying, and you're the only one who might be able to save him. The desperation in her voice was real. The fear was real. But so was the memory of my acceptance letter burning in that trash can. Where is he? I heard myself ask. Mount Sinai, ICU. Harper, please. I hung up. Mount Sinai, my hospital. Michael was here, somewhere in the building where I'd built my new life. I stood there in the parking garage for a long time, key in my hand, trying to decide what to do. Finally, I got in my car and drove home to my quiet apartment, where I sat on my couch with a glass of wine and tried to pretend my hands weren't shaking. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Michael was here, in my hospital, probably scared, definitely sick, possibly dying. And despite everything, despite the burned dreams and broken promises, he was still the brother who'd once let me tag along when he went to catch fireflies in the summer evening. At 2 a.m. I gave up trying to sleep. I got dressed, drove back to the hospital, and looked up Michael Chen in our patient database. Room 314, cardiac ICU. Admitted 3 days ago with acute heart failure secondary to congenital cardiac abnormality. The same abnormality I'd written about in my high school research project. The one my father had burned. I could have requested his case be transferred to me. Could have walked into that room as his doctor and watched my parents' faces when they realised who I'd become. Instead, I just read his chart. His condition was serious but treatable. The attending physician was competent but inexperienced with this particular defect. Michael needed surgery. The kind of surgery I performed successfully 3 times a week. I closed the chart and went home. For 2 days, I went about my normal routine. Surgery, rounds, consultations. I avoided the cardiac ICU where Michael was staying. But on the 3rd day, everything changed. I was grabbing coffee in the doctor's lounge when Dr. Peterson, the attending on Michael's case, approached me. "Harper, I need a favour. I've got a patient with a complex congenital defect, something I've never seen before. The family is getting desperate, talking about transferring him to another hospital. Any chance you could take a look at his scans?" My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. What's the patient's name? Michael Chen. No relation to you, I assume, despite the last name? I set down my coffee carefully. "Let me see the scans." 20 minutes later, I was staring at images of my brother's heart on a computer screen. Dr. Peterson stood beside me, pointing out the abnormalities. "See here? This septal defect, combined with the valve malformation. I've never seen anything quite like it. The patient's been stable so far, but his condition is deteriorating. Without surgery, soon, he'll die," I finished quietly. "Exactly. But this kind of surgery, it's beyond my skill level. I was thinking of recommending transfer to Johns Hopkins or maybe Cleveland Clinic." I studied the scans more carefully. It was exactly what I'd suspected all those years ago when Michael would get winded easily, when his lips would turn slightly blue during sports. A complex but correctable defect that most surgeons would be afraid to touch. But I'd performed this exact surgery before, successfully. "I can do it," I said. Dr. Peterson looked surprised. "Really? You've seen this before?" "Once or twice. It's complex, but manageable, if you know what you're doing." "That would be amazing, Harper. The family has been so worried. Should I tell them we found a surgeon?" I hesitated. "Let me talk to them first, before we make any commitments." An hour later, I was standing outside room 314, wearing my white coat with Dr. H. Chen, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery, embroidered on the chest. Through the small window, I could see Michael lying in the hospital bed, looking pale and smaller than I remembered. My mother sat beside him, holding his hand. My father stood by the window, looking older, greyer. They looked scared, exhausted, human. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for them. Then I remembered the smell of smoke, the sight of my dreams turning to ash. I straightened my shoulders, checked my name badge, and walked into the room. "Good afternoon," I said, in my most professional voice. "I'm Dr. Chen. I understand you've been looking for a cardiac specialist." My mother looked up from Michael's bedside, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. For a split second, there was something almost like recognition in her face, the shape of my eyes, the line of my jaw. But then it passed, and she just saw another doctor in a white coat. "Dr. Chen," she said, hope creeping into her voice. Are you here about Michael?" I stepped further into the room, my hands clasped behind my back. Michael was awake but groggy from medication, his face pale against the white pillows. He looked so much older than I remembered, but also somehow fragile in a way that reminded me of the little boy who used to get winded climbing the stairs to his bedroom. "I've reviewed your son's case," I said, keeping my voice clinically neutral. "He has a complex congenital cardiac defect that requires immediate surgical intervention." My father moved away from the window. "We've been told that by 3 other doctors. The question is, can you actually do something about it?" The irony was overwhelming. Here was the man who'd burned my medical school applications, asking if I could save his son's life. The same man who'd told me I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor was now looking at me with desperate hope because of the letters MD after my name. "The surgery is complex," I continued, "but I've performed this exact procedure before. The success rate is high when done by an experienced surgeon." "How experienced?" my mother asked, leaning forward. "I mean, you look so young. Have you really done this surgery before?" I almost smiled. Even now, even when Michael's life hung in the balance, she was questioning my abilities. "I'm the chief of Cardiothoracic surgery here at Mount Sinai," I said calmly. "I've been performing complex cardiac procedures for the past 5 years. This particular defect, while rare, is something I've successfully corrected multiple times." My father's eyebrows shot up. "Chief, at your age, how old are you?" "Old enough to save your son's life," I replied. "The question is whether you want me to." There was something in my tone that made both my parents pause. Michael, despite his medication-induced haze, was looking at me with curious intensity, as if trying to place something familiar. "Of course we want you to operate," my mother said quickly. "If you can save him—" "There are risks," I continued, falling into the familiar rhythm of informed consent. "Any cardiac surgery carries the possibility of complications: bleeding, infection, damage to surrounding structures. In Michael's case, the complexity of the defect means the surgery will take several hours. Recovery will be extensive." "But you think you can fix it?" my father asked. I looked at Michael then, really looked at him. Despite everything that had happened between us, despite the years of resentment and anger, he was still my brother. Still the same brother who taught me to catch fireflies, who'd shared his Halloween candy with me when I was too sick to go trick-or-treating. "Yes," I said simply, "I can fix it." My mother burst into tears. "Thank you, Dr. Chen. Thank you so much. We've been so scared." And the other doctors kept saying they weren't sure. "I'll need you to sign some consent forms," I said. "My surgical coordinator will be in shortly to go over the details. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. As I turned to leave, Michael's voice stopped me. "Dr. Chen?" I looked back at him. That's a coincidence, isn't it? You having the same last name as us?" For a moment, our eyes met. There was something there, a flicker of recognition, or maybe just wishful thinking on my part. "Chen is a common name," I said quietly. "I'll see you in the morning, Michael." I left the room and walked quickly to the nearest bathroom, where I locked the door and leaned against the sink, trying to steady my breathing. In 12 hours, I would be holding my brother's heart in my hands. The same brother whose future my parents had prioritized over mine. The same brother who'd watched them destroy my dreams. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "How did it go?" I typed back, "Surgery scheduled for tomorrow morning. Jesus, Harper, are you okay? I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. Was I okay? I honestly didn't know. 10 years of anger and hurt were warring with something else. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe just the basic human instinct to save a life. I will be, I replied. That night, I stayed late at the hospital, reviewing Michael's scans over and over, planning every incision, every suture. This had to be perfect. Not because I owed my family anything, but because I owed it to myself. To the 16-year-old girl who dreamed of saving lives. At 5 a.m, I was already scrubbed and gowned when Michael was wheeled into OR3. My parents weren't allowed in the surgical suite, but I could see them through the observation window, my mother pacing, my father standing rigid with his arms crossed. "Ready, Dr. Chen?" asked Jennifer, my head surgical nurse. I looked down at Michael, unconscious now on the operating table. In a few minutes, I would make the first incision. I would open up his chest and fix the heart defect that had been slowly killing him for 28 years. "Ready," I said. The surgery took 4.5 hours. It was delicate, precise work. Rerouting vessels, patching holes, rebuilding valves that had never formed correctly. With each suture, each careful repair, I thought about the research project I'd written in high school, the one that had described this exact procedure, the one my father had burned. Turned out I'd been right all along. "Beautiful work, Dr. Chen," said Dr. Martinez, my attending anesthesiologist. "I've never seen that particular technique before." "It's something I developed during residency," I replied, putting in the final sutures, "for cases exactly like this." When we closed Michael's chest, his heart was beating strong and steady. The monitors showed perfect rhythm, excellent blood pressure. It was a complete success. I stepped out of the OR to find my parents waiting in the hallway, still in the same clothes they'd been wearing the day before. "How is he?" my mother asked immediately. "The surgery was successful," I said, pulling off my surgical cap. "We were able to repair all the defects. His heart is functioning normally now." My mother actually fell to her knees in relief. My father caught her arm, his own face crumbling with emotion. "Thank you," he whispered. "Dr. Chen, I don't know how we can ever thank you." "No thanks necessary," I said. "I was just doing my job." But as I started to walk away, something made me turn back. "Actually," I said, "there is something I'm curious about. You mentioned yesterday that your last name is also Chen. Do you have any other children?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. My parents exchanged a look. The same kind of guilty, uncomfortable look I remembered from childhood when they'd forgotten about a school play or parent-teacher conference. We had a daughter," my mother said slowly. "Harper, but she left home years ago. We don't really keep in touch." "I see," I said. "What happened to her?" Another exchanged look. My father cleared his throat. "She was headstrong, had unrealistic expectations. We tried to guide her toward a more practical path, but she refused to listen. Eventually, she just left." "Unrealistic expectations?" "She wanted to be a doctor," my mother said, as if this explained everything, but she just wasn't. I mean, she was a good student, but medical school is so competitive. We didn't want her to be disappointed. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "So what did you encourage her to do instead?" "Medical assistant," my father said. "Good, steady work. She could still be around medicine, just In a more appropriate role? More appropriate, I repeated. Well, yes. I mean, let's be honest. Not everyone is cut out to be a doctor. It takes a special kind of person, real intelligence, real dedication. He gestured toward the OR doors behind me. Like you, Dr. Chen, you're clearly someone with exceptional abilities. The irony was so thick I could taste it. And you don't think your daughter had those abilities? My mother shifted uncomfortably. Harper was a dreamer. She read a lot of books, got good grades, but that's different from having real medical aptitude. She probably would have struggled in college, let alone medical school. Besides, my father added, we needed to focus our resources on Michael. He had so much potential, but he just needed time to find his direction. Harper was always going to be fine. She was resourceful, independent, but Michael needed our support. I stared at them for a long moment. These people who had raised me, who were supposed to love me unconditionally, talking about their daughter like she was some sort of consolation prize, a backup plan. Someone whose dreams were disposable because they didn't fit the narrative they'd created about their family. That's interesting, I said finally, because in my experience, the best doctors are often the ones who face the most obstacles, the ones who had to fight for their dreams instead of having them handed to them. Oh, absolutely, my mother agreed quickly. That's probably why you're so exceptional, Dr. Chen. You clearly worked hard to get where you are. Yes, I said quietly. I did. Michael was moved to recovery 2 hours later. When he woke up groggy but alert, the first thing he did was look around the room until his eyes found mine. The surgery went well, I told him. Your heart is working perfectly now. He nodded, still hazy from anesthesia. Dr. Chen? Yes? You remind me of someone, my breath caught. Do I? My sister, she always wanted to be a doctor, always knew exactly what she wanted. His voice was slurred but sincere. She would have been a good one, like you. What happened to her? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She left. Our parents, they didn't believe in her, burned her college applications because they thought she was reaching too high. His eyes were clearer now, more focused. Biggest mistake they ever made. Why do you say that? Because she was the smartest person I ever knew, and the kindest. She would have moved mountains to help people. He tried to sit up slightly. I should have stood up for her. Should have stopped them, but I was a coward. Michael, no, it's true. I let them destroy her dreams because it was easier than admitting I was the family disappointment. She deserved better from all of us. I felt tears prick my eyes. In 10 years, this was the first time anyone in my family had acknowledged what they'd done to me. I think about her all the time, Michael continued. Wonder what she's doing if she ever forgave us, if she's happy. I'm sure she's doing well, I said softly. People like that, people with real determination, they usually find a way to achieve their dreams with or without family support. I hope so. I really hope so. Over the next 3 days, I checked on Michael regularly. His recovery was textbook perfect. No complications, excellent healing, heart function completely normal. My parents were there constantly, hovering, grateful, calling me a miracle worker. It was on the 3rd day that everything finally came to a head. I was reviewing Michael's discharge paperwork when the code blue alarm sounded over the hospital intercom. Code blue, ICU room 3, code blue, ICU room 3. Michael's room. I ran down the hallway, my heart hammering. His surgery had been perfect. What could have gone wrong? I burst through the door to find Michael sitting up in bed, very much alive, while my parents stood frozen by the window. A nurse was cancelling the code blue, false alarm, equipment malfunction, but that wasn't what had stopped me in my tracks. Standing next to Michael's bed was Dr. Sarah Martinez, and she was looking at my parents with an expression I'd never seen before. "So you're Harper's family," she was saying, her voice ice cold. "The ones who burned her medical school applications." My mother's face had gone white. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Dr. Sarah Martinez, Harper's best friend from medical school. You know, the medical school she got into after working 3 jobs to pay for college. The medical school where she graduated summa cum laude, the medical school that led to her becoming one of the youngest chief surgeons in the country." The room was dead silent. My father found his voice first. "I think there's been some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Sarah said. Your daughter, Harper Chen, is Dr. Harper Chen, the same Dr. Chen who just saved your son's life." The silence stretched on forever. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Harper?" I stepped fully into the room then, no longer hiding behind my professional persona. "Hello, Michael." My mother made a sound like she was choking. My father just stared. My mother started. "Yes," I said simply. "I'm your daughter, the one who dropped out, the one who wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, the one whose dreams weren't worth supporting." My father's face cycled through a dozen emotions: shock, disbelief, something that might have been pride, and finally, crushing guilt. "Harper, we didn't know." "Of course you didn't know," I said, my voice steady and calm. "You never bothered to find out what happened to me after you threw me away." "We didn't throw you away," my mother protested weakly. "We were trying to protect you from disappointment." "You were protecting yourselves," I interrupted, "from having to support a daughter when you'd already decided your son was more important." Michael was staring at me with wonder and horror in equal measure. "Harper, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." "I know you are," I said gently. "You've been apologizing for 10 years, Michael. The question is whether sorry is enough." My parents were both crying now. "Harper, please," my mother said. "We made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But we can fix this. We can be a family again." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had given birth to me, raised me, and then burned my dreams when they didn't align with her plans. "No," I said quietly. "We can't." "What do you mean?" my father asked. "I mean, I'm not your daughter anymore. I haven't been for 10 years. I'm Dr. Harper Chen now. I have a life, a career, friends who are my real family, people who believed in me when you didn't." "But we believe in you now," my mother said desperately. "We see what you've accomplished." "You see my title," I corrected. "You see my success. But you didn't believe in Harper, the 16-year-old with big dreams. You didn't believe in Harper, the college student, working 3 jobs. You only care now because I've proven you wrong in a way you can't ignore." The truth of it settled over the room like a weight. "Please," my father said, "give us a chance to make this right." I was quiet for a long time, thinking about the scared teenager I'd been, about the nights I'd cried myself to sleep in my tiny studio apartment, wondering if my parents were right about me, thinking about all the times over the years when I'd wanted to call them, to share my successes and failures, to have a family to come home to. I spent 10 years proving I didn't need you, I said finally. And it turns out I was right. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your love. I built a life without you, and it's a good life. Harper, Michael started. I'm glad you're okay, I told him. I'm glad I could fix your heart. But I can't fix this. I can't fix us. Too much has been broken for too long. I walked toward the door, then paused. You know what the strangest part is? I said, without turning around. If you just believed in me, if you just supported my dreams instead of burning them, I would have been here for Michael anyway. I would have been the daughter who became a doctor and saved her brother's life with her family cheering her on. Instead, I'm the stranger who operated on him out of professional obligation. It doesn't have to be that way, my mother pleaded. Yes, it does, I said, because that's the choice you made 10 years ago, and some choices can't be undone. I walked out of the room and down the hallway, my white coat trailing behind me. Behind me, I could hear my mother sobbing and my father calling my name. But I didn't turn around. I had patients to see, lives to save, a future to build. And for the first time in 10 years, I was completely at peace with the family I'd chosen, instead of the one I'd been born into. The next morning, I was in my office early, reviewing cases for the day, when there was a knock on my door. Come in, I called, expecting Sarah or one of my residents. Instead, Michael walked in, moving slowly but steadily. He was dressed in street clothes, clearly discharged. Michael, I said, surprised, you should be at home resting. I needed to see you first, he said, sitting down heavily in the chair across from my desk, before I left. We looked at each other for a moment. He seemed older somehow, the events of the past few days having aged him in a way that had nothing to do with his surgery. Thank you, he said finally, for saving my life. I know you didn't have to. I'm a doctor, I said, or it's what I did. Should I do? No. It's more than that. You could have let another surgeon handle it. You could have transferred me to another hospital. You chose to do it yourself. I considered this. Maybe I needed to prove something to myself. Did you? Prove it, I mean. I thought about it. Yes, I think I did. Michael nodded. For what it's worth, I always knew you'd make it, even when Mom and Dad were burning your papers, even when they were saying you'd never amount to anything. I knew they were wrong. But you didn't stop them. No, I didn't, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. He leaned forward. Harper, I know you don't owe me anything. I know I have no right to ask. But is there any chance at all, that we could try to be brother and sister again? I studied his face. The same face I'd grown up with, older now, marked by illness and regret, but still recognizable as the boy who'd taught me to ride a bike. I don't know, I said honestly. A lot of damage has been done. Michael, a lot of years have passed. I know, but maybe we could start small. Maybe just, I could have your phone number. We could text sometimes. The hope in his voice was heartbreaking. Michael, I'm not asking you to forgive Mom and Dad. I'm not even asking you to forgive me. Not really. I miss my sister. I missed her every day for 10 years. And now that I know where she is, what she's become, I don't want to lose her again. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not breaking, healing maybe. Okay, I said quietly. Okay? We can try, just us, not Mom and Dad. I'm not ready for that, and I may never be, but maybe we can figure out how to be siblings again. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve." I pulled out my phone and handed it to him. "Put your number in," as he typed. I said, "Why, Michael, there are going to be rules. Anything. I don't want to hear about Mom and Dad. I don't want updates on their lives, their feelings, their regrets. This is about you and me, nobody else." "Understood. And if you ever let them treat me like the family disappointment again, if you ever stand by while they minimize my accomplishments or suggest I'm not good enough, we're done. Forever. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear." He handed my phone back. "Harper, I'm proud of you. I'm so proud I could burst. And I'm sorry it took me 10 years to say that." After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, looking at his contact information in my phone. Michael Chen, my brother. Maybe Sarah had been right. Maybe this wasn't about proving anything to my parents or getting their approval. Maybe it was about proving to myself that I could choose who to forgive and when, that I could decide what family meant to me. My parents had made their choice 10 years ago when they lit that fire. Now I was making mine. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. But sometimes, if you're very careful and very lucky, you can build new ones. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Thank you for everything, sis. Rest well tonight. You saved my life in more ways than one." I smiled and typed back, "Take care of yourself, big brother. Follow up with cardiology in 2 weeks." "Will do, Dr. Chen." For the first time in 10 years, I signed a text to my brother with my real name instead of my title. Love, Harper. It felt like coming home.